Welcome to the 15th episode of Kabbalistic Mystic, the podcast for the Western seeker, where we explore the tree of life and the ancient Hebrew wisdom as the lost spiritual tradition of the West. A piece of logistics before we start. Some of you may have noticed that I did not produce an episode last week, and that's because I've recently taken on a big engagement. I started to write a long due novel, and so I have a little less time for Kabbalistic Mystic, and so I'll be producing episodes on a bi-weekly basis, that is every other week. This week we'll be discussing sin. What constitutes sin for various people? What's the difference between the 7 deadly sins and the 10 commandments? Why these sins are deadly? And how they came to be the myth that we think sin is today. Now, you already know that I grew up Jewish, so to get some perspective, I invited my wife, Diane, who grew up Catholic, to join me on this discussion, as well as another friend that you will meet shortly. Let's begin. All right, sin war. Competing.
Sin war?
Sin war. It's like competing who has done more sin. All right, I'll start.
Okay.
I stole money from my best friend when I was 13.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty bad. How much did you steal? Because that makes a difference.
Really? So do you think there's a difference if you steal like $1 or...
Yeah, like $1 is like negligible.
Really?
It's like, it could still be a sin. Like technically you definitely did something wrong against the person, but the bigger the crime, I think the bigger the sin.
All right, I say we just go all out and stop dilly-dallying and avoiding the topic. Throw us in.
Okay. Well, if we go for stealing, I stole candy bars. I slipped those marathon bars up my sleeve when I was 10. Stole them from the store. Oh, I have another one.
Go ahead.
One already. And then I was like 11. I used to run through, I don't know why I did this. I ran through people's yards in Denver where I lived, and I would steal their ripe tomatoes and throw them at the bus.
Nice. I think I'm still winning. I stole so many popsicles from grocery stores.
Really?
Oh my God. I was an expert.
How did you steal popsicles? They're so cold.
I would hide them in my pants.
Oh, God. Cold.
I know,
Brr.
but and then you have to walk out really fast and with a straight back so that nobody notices and doesn't start melting in your pants.
Okay, didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so when I was this was really blatant. It was a small amount, but it was very in your face. So I was in 5th grade and in a Catholic school. And this girl, it was an all-girls school, and this girl dropped a quarter on the floor, and I put my foot on it, and she knew it was under my shoe. And she's like, she looked up at me and she's like, can you move your foot? And so I'm sorry. So I dragged my foot and I dragged the quarter with it. She looked at me and I'm like, what's the problem? I'm moving my foot.
You were like the bully girl.
It's really weird. I never thought of myself that way, but I think in some ways I was.
Wow.
Yeah, there's other things like now that I'm remembering, I'm like, wow, I was not like, I had friends and I was a nice girl, but I definitely did some mean things.
Okay, I think you're really losing this battle. I'm going to go for the heavy hitters. I had a sex with a prostitute and then I stole her wooden leg and her bionic eye and tortured them.
You did not.
I mean, I meant to say torched.
Okay, that's a lie.
Okay, well, the bionic eye and the prosthetic foot is a lie, but I did have sex with a prostitute. That's a pretty big sin, right?
Well, okay, is it? Because here's my question about that. You both know that you are in a commerce situation. It's not like she's in love with you or you're in love with her. You're having sex for money.
All
Like-
right. Hold
Like
on.
so
I can still win this. That's okay. That's
okay,
okay.
wait.
Yeah.
But I just want to address the fact that, like, to me, that's an agreed upon relationship. So where's the harm?
So basically what you're saying is that sin is only if you've caused harm.
I think sin definitely comes with causing harm.
Okay, well, let's redefine the battle. Okay?
Okay.
The battle of the sin is sins considering how we were raised.
Okay, well, that's a different thing. So in that case, since I was raised Catholic, 12 years of Catholic school, I mean, masturbation was like out of the possibility for me. So I actually didn't sin until I didn't even masturbate until I was 18 because I was afraid that I would go to hell.
Wow. Seriously? How did you manage until you were 18?
It was difficult.
Wow. Okay, so
I think amazingly, sometimes I would just have that tingly feeling.
Yeah.
And, it was exciting, but it was really scary. Like, sex to me was a big sin area. Like, if you weren't married, like I grew up in that time, like you weren't married and you were going to have sex, like you might as well just go to hell.
Okay. Well, according to that definition and in Judaism too, I had sex with practically every girlfriend that I've been with since I was 13.
Well, you're just a slut.
Okay, how's this? I stood in a synagogue in the middle of Yom Kippur, which, for those listeners who don't know, you're not supposed to eat or drink anything for 24 hours. It's a big fasting day. It's like the holiest day of holy. And I'm in the synagogue, and I'm eating a pack of sugar, which gave me energy. And I said, if God exists, kill me now.
Right.
Nothing happened. So I waited a few minutes. I said, fuck God. Nothing happened. I said, God, if you exist, if you can hear me, fuck you. Kill me now. Nothing happened. I was like, okay, there's no God.
Wow. How old were you?
Well, I decided that there's no God when I was 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that changed. But this was when I was probably 13 or 14. I guess there was some residue while I was in the synagogue to like do something like this and say something like that.
Test.
Yeah, kind of test it.
Yeah.
But according to Jewish law, oh my God, I was the sinner of all sinners. I mean, I ate pork.
Yeah, you've definitely been a sinner within the context.
Within the context, I've definitely been a sinner.
So wouldn't that say that sin is, I mean, first of all, sin is totally contextual. It's just a structured, it's a social structure to keep people in check.
Hello.
This is Andy Rumsey. Andy's a local musician, a friend, and a deep thinker in the community who I respect. Andy grew up Mormon. Andy, Mormonism is a stream of Christianity, isn't it?
Depends on who you talk to. If you talk to Mormons, yeah, of course, because it's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But if you talk to other people, like certain other branches of Christianity, certain other denominations, they're like, oh, the Mormons aren't Christian. No.
Right,
It's like,
right.
That's weird because they profess Christ as their savior. I mean, I'm not Mormon anymore, but at the same time, it's like, you don't have the right to tell someone what they are and what they aren't.
Right,
So
right.
that's a little caveat, but
some would say that's a sin to tell somebody what they are and what they're not, right?
I guess you could, yeah.
Wasn't it
part of
Jesus that said, judge or you shall be judged, right?
Judge not lest he be judged.
There you go.
Yeah. I have a different interpretation of that as well, along with sin. But so my interpretation of judge not lest ye be judged from my own personal experience has been just, if I judge someone, usually I'll come back and judge myself on the same thing even harder. At least that's my psychological gymnastic that I jump through for some reason. But I find that anything you judge someone for, you've done it at some point, you've done it, and that's the whole point. So it's more of a personal thing. I don't view it as something where my mortal soul is on the line because I'm judging someone else. It's like, that's going to come back on you. Like, it's just going to come back on you. I mean, again, if you accept what people of the LDS faith, which is, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Mormons for short.
Okay.
But they're called Latter-day Saints. They're LDS. So if you believe what they tell you, then yeah, they're Christian. And so how the church is structured with a prophet, so back in the day was Jesus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he had 12 apostles. So the hierarchy of the church is there's a prophet and 12 apostles.
And that's always stays this way?
Yeah. So that's why they structured it that way, and that's why you have the name Church of Latter-day Saints. So they set up the church just as it was in the beginning.
I think that there's a whole generation and there's a whole community out there that still hasn't quite come together. I mean, in some pockets it has, of what I called religion refugees. So people who are basically outcasts of Western religions who are looking for their spirituality and realize that they were cut short by their spiritual heritage because they want to be spiritual and they don't want to necessarily migrate east. That is to become Buddhist or Hindus, practice Hinduism or Taoism or whatnot. But they're seeking some kind of a spiritual value in their own heritage, and they can't find it because, organized religion in the West has robbed Western spirituality from its essence. You can't really be a spiritual Westerner without being a Jew, a Muslim, or a Christian.
There are like the Gnostic Gospels, and there's the Kabbalah, and there are the Sufi poets like Rumi and Kabir, who were the very essence of spirituality, even within the structures of religion. And at the time, they were also outcasts. Like those people were outcasts within their own time. So I think my personal opinion is like that does exist, but you have to dig deeper. And before you say anything, a lot of the Western world, it seems, especially in the last 50 years, because definitely there's been a turn away from religion because of its dominating quality, has been turned to the East. Like people have really been seeking. So they've gone to yoga or Buddhism, like you said, or shamanism, or some amalgamation of different things, like some little collage of different hybrid spiritual systems that, like you said, aren't true to their own roots. But I think that, I think it does exist within, if you go deepest into the mystical texts of the main three religions, it's there. Look at the words of Jesus. Like, Jesus spoke the truth. Like, love thy neighbor as thyself. Like, oh my God, that's so basic. Like, do no harm. Like, these basic things. And I think that, to me, is where sin resides, is when we step away from our hearts and whether we're doing harm to ourselves or harm to another or harm to the world, like that to me is where sin resides.
There is a seed of Western spirituality that is actually shared across all these religions. But every time somebody has investigated that seed and has gone deeper into that, they've been outcasts. And yes, all this exists today, but it's a very small minority of people who investigate that, who embody themselves in that. Sufism, I would say, is becoming somewhat popular, but also just in very, very small pockets and usually in very liberal circles. In general, when we're talking about mainstream, there is this notion, and I think a pendulum, that people in the West, because they were their upbringing was so confining in terms of "thou shalt not do this, do that," and if you are a sinner, they have gravitated either to atheism or have migrated to the East. When you investigate the seed, you're starting to realize why things have got to be where they are.
To me, it seems like all about control.
So there's two aspects there. There's the aspect of the need to control the people and how religion sort of goes bad, right? But I want to set that aside because that's, it has a conspiracy theory type of flavor to it. And let's assume for a second that everybody means good, okay? I think that in that sense, when I look at even religions that are not so confining, like Buddhism, what I see is that somebody somehow has made a breakthrough. In other words, have become enlightened, like the Buddha.
Right.
What happened, because it's so rare that somebody gets enlightened, that somebody gets awakened, right? Everybody's trying to follow the footstep of that particular individual. And there's this almost forgetting that the journey is extremely different for everybody else. And what we're trying to do is trying to mimic the circumstances in which the particular individual have, gotten enlightened. And what we do is we take the words of that particular person and then we're like, okay, this is what worked for that person. We hear, obviously that person was very smart, and we try to understand what they were saying within the contextual mindset of us, the unawakened people. And what that causes is rigidity. There is almost like a written in stone type of quality to it. And over time, it's losing its contextual meaning. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to replicate it just by logically and intellectually understanding its value.
Right.
And, I mean,
where's the present day application?
Where's the present day application, and where is the association for our particular journey? And that's, to me, one way how sin is being created. If we want, let's say in Judaism, to bring the Messiah, to bring salvation, then everybody needs to observe the Shabbat, Shabbat. And over time, we lose the contextual meaning that Shabbat is just a metaphor for, the union, the seventh dimension, so on and so forth. And suddenly it becomes that nobody can turn on the light on Shabbat. Right? Or,
it becomes rule-bound instead of thoughtful mindfulness.
Exactly. But it comes from the place of trying to, but we want to bring salvation. And it says so and so we must do so and so. And when I look at the ancient Hebrew wisdom, there's clear evidence of where it all came from. As a Jew, I don't know much about Mormons other than what was explained to me via a very funny South Park episode.
Which was 100% accurate. I mean, it's funny. They do it in a funny way and they poke fun, but it's 100% accurate.
So let me recap what I remember. So Mormons believe that a guy named Joseph Smith found these two plates on which the word of God was written.
It's not two plates. It's like it's a book. It's essentially a book written on golden plates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And that was the Book of Mormon.
Just like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars, the Bible is a trilogy too. And if you don't read or see part 3, it'll all be confusing to you.
A part 3 of the Bible? That's amazing.
Jewish people like part 1. Christians think part 2 is best. But in part 3, everything gets wrapped up and all your questions put to rest. Part 3 has all your favorite characters and lots of new ones too. And a whole lot more twists and turns, and every word of it's true. Just like Godfather and Terminator, the Bible is a trilogy too. And if you don't read or see part 3, it'll all be confusing to you.
Yeah, and the story is he was asking God which religion would be right, and God appeared to him and said, none of them. You gotta go start it. You gotta go start the right one, man.
Got it.
Yeah.
And okay, so what I also know about Mormon faith is that the kingdom, or whatever you get when you are, a righteous man, you get your own planet or something.
Essentially, what God is to this world, you become essentially a god to another world. And it should be noted that, I have a lot of family that's Mormon, and I'm not going to be here lambasting
Of course.
the faith, but
Yeah.
this is, from what I understand, this is all correct. This isn't meant to be disrespectful to anybody. When my parents got divorced, a lot of people within our ward, which is basically, it's just it's a congregation.
Okay.
So people within my ward, they just kind of ostracized my family. And, like, we got treated different. And so my family's going through this huge struggle, right? Sometimes we're missing church. Yeah, we got a lot going on.
Mm-hmm.
And just come to church, like, where were you last week? Missed you. Like, where were you? You should start coming. It's like, dude, you're making me want to come less. So I came less, because it's like, I don't go to church to get a bunch of shit. Pardon my language. Are we allowed to cuss on? So, yeah, we were just getting a lot of shit. It's like that. If I'm supposed to be here to feel the spirit, as you guys claim, you're making it really hard for me to feel the spirit. So I just had a while, I just kind of stopped going. And then as I started researching other religions and things like that, trying to figure out which one I wanted, then I kind of followed in my dad's footsteps, and he's hardcore atheist now. Now I'm just somewhere in the middle. I don't like organized religion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you need an intermediary to talk to any sort of God that there is or is not. I'm fairly open-minded. I think there are a lot of things that we don't understand, but I will sum up my feelings with an old colloquialism, basically, where it's the devil's talking about how there's these I went ahead and I found these people, and they know the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Know the truth, and some of his followers are like, oh, that's not good. He's like, don't worry about it, I'm helping him organize it.
One of your songs, how does that line go? Sing with me. I was
it goes I was born a Christian man with a Christian heart,
Christian hands,
and Christian hands, the hands I've kept, and the heart still beats, but the Christian man inside me sleeps. So that song's that's from a song called Dearly, and the chorus to that is, clearly can you see that you are dear to me.
I was born a Christian man with a Christian heart and Christian hands. The hands I've kept and the heart still beats, but the Christian man inside me sleeps. So prophecies have changed, little now before or after, and you die for what you know, when you act as if it matters. Say clearly, can you see that you are dear to me? Clearly, can you see that you are dear to me? Oh.
Well, sin, according to my religion, like, you can't masturbate. That's a sin too. And so it's like that's essentially like a mark against your soul, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the sort of the traditional interpretation of sin, is that, like, these are things and they tally up, and then at the end of your life, basically, you're gonna look over all that with God. He's gonna sit you down, and you're gonna go over it. And it's like taking a test, and then at the end, the teacher sits down with you, and you go through each and every question. And he's like, oh, you messed that one up. It's like, yeah, I kind of felt like I did at the time. I wasn't sure. I just answered to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So it puts
But
a
that-
red mark on your paper,
But that porn was so good.
Right.
Why did
Yeah.
you create it in the first place?
Yeah. Well, he created us, and we made the porn. Right.
Right.
But I still think there is a sense of anything that's good, or that you do, or is good in the world, is because of God, and anything bad that you do is on you. That's why I don't like organized religion, because I think it's an simplification of a really complex world, and it sort of leaves out any room for subjectivity. For me, I look at sin as anything that hurts you or hurts somebody else. Or you could apply that to your environment as well. Like anything that's detrimental to you, somebody else, something that has life, or just, your surroundings. Some people will say, well, I just don't think morality is subjective. The fact that we're having this conversation proves that it is. Because I'm disagreeing with you. That's subjective right there. We have two different viewpoints on morality.
In Judaism, it's so much easier to sin because, for example, Shabbat, Sabbath, the seventh day, according to mainstream Judaism, you're not even allowed to turn on the light switch. That's a big sin.
Yeah.
So we're talking about very tangible day-to-day stuff that are crazy ridiculous, and they're all considered sin. And of course, there's the masturbation and sexuality and modesty and, the whole cover yourself up type of thing for women, and
right.
Women not supposed to sing, and, the voice of a woman is unkosher. And
that's in Judaism?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. I mean, you might know of the more liberal Judaism here in the U.S., but yeah, when I'm talking about mainstream Judaism, Orthodox Jews, absolutely, a woman's not supposed to sing, a woman's not supposed to show her hair. There's a lot of equivalent, there's a lot of similarity between the way women are sort of viewed with Islam, with radical Islam. Right. And, so take, for example, one particular topic, the mixing of milk and meat. There's one phrase in the Hebrew Bible that says, "Thou shalt not cook a fawn with its mother's milk." A fawn or a goat. Thou shalt not cook a goat in its mother's milk. And to me, that's a very logical, it's sort of like a message, be compassionate, right? Don't kill the young of the mother and use her milk to cook it with.
Bad form.
Yeah, it's just like, have a little tact here.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That's like a chicken fajita omelet. Like, dude,
yeah.
Chicken and eggs, really?
Chicken fajita omelet.
Even though it's one of my favorite dishes at the Satellite here in town.
Chicken fajita omelet, I love it. That's a great name for a podcast episode. So from that, there's extrapolations and books and books and books and thousands of rules in Judaism. I mean, every Jewish kitchen has two different sinks, one for meat and one for milk. And you're not allowed, and if you just ate meat, you're not allowed to eat anything with milk for sometimes 5-6 hours. It's so like different set of dishes.
There's separate sink for washing your hands too.
You can wash your hands in both sinks, but if your hands you touched meat, you can't wash your hands in the sink that is dedicated to dairy, basically.
See, that to me is taking it too far for me. Like, because I don't get it. It's like, okay, if you don't want to eat them together, fine, but they're all going down the same drain. Are you going to have two drainage systems? Like, at what point do you draw the line?
Well, it's not about the drain. It's about how, so just to explain, not that I, agree with it, but right. It's about if you washed your hand in the sink that is dedicated for dairy, and then you wash dishes in that sink, potentially a particle of a meat would then touch the particular dish that you just potentially, right? You just cleaned. Right. And then that particular sink is no longer kosher to wash your dishes and have them be maintained as non-dairy, as dairy-free, as meat-free, yeah. I guess. It's
but if
more
you're
about
washing them anyway.
I know,
right?
I know.
Yeah,
Hey, don't get me started. I mean,
I hope that doesn't sound disrespectful. It's just I don't understand and wouldn't subscribe.
Yeah, for somebody who comes from the outside, it's extremely hard to understand. And I think the conversation with you, and not to take away from There's an old joke that says that Judaism invented guilt and Christianity have spread it around the world.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
And so there's, not to take away from your description of what was forbidden, and, it's all about the intensity.
Right.
But I think I'm starting to realize how much Judaism is more strict than other religions in terms of the sheer amount of rules and regulations. I'll give you one more example, and it's an example that I mentioned in the past episode, the previous episode, Introduction to Judaism, or Judaism Demystified, episode 14. And I mentioned that growing up, I was not allowed to tear toilet paper on Shabbat after going number 2. So you go in the bathroom, you just pooped, and you cannot cut toilet paper. So we had to pre-cut our toilet paper. And all that is because you're not allowed to create any new structures on Shabbat, because you're not allowed to work on Shabbat. So they extrapolated.
Same with Mormonism, you can't work on Sunday.
Yeah, there you go. But they've extrapolated the work to anything you destroy, anything you create. And that's why you're not allowed to turn the light switch on Shabbat, because you're potentially creating a fire, like an electric circuit. You're building an electric circuit. You're not allowed to open an umbrella because you're building a new structure. You're not allowed to tear toilet paper because you had one piece of toilet paper and now you have 2. So you've created a new structure.
But by that same token, you shouldn't be able to poop. You shouldn't be able to poop either, because you've created something new that wasn't there before. But now you've just created this fresh new poop log.
And it's beautiful. Just look at it.
Yeah. But I mean, that's where, again, I ask, where do you draw the line? Because you could apply that, don't pick your nose, because now you've got a booger floating around there that used to be in your nose, and now it's floating around free. It's this new structure, independent.
You're absolutely right, Andy. And this is why I'm reflecting this to you as an external outsider. When you are born, and it's drilled in your mind that you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. Oh my God, Shabbat, walking around on Shabbat in the streets of Jerusalem, let me tell you, there's something beautiful about it. Because most people don't drive. Of course, you're not allowed to drive, right? Operating machinery.
Yeah.
And turn on the car and so on and so forth. But so you have an entire city, especially when I grew up. Today, it's a little bit different because there's a lot more secular people. But when I grew up, you walk around the street of Jerusalem and it's beautiful. It's almost like there's this holiness in the air. And there's something beautiful about one day where everybody walks and enjoys. Not when it's forced. Of course, I hated it as a kid, but it was beautiful. But here, so when you grow up with that notion, things don't seem so ridiculous to you. But when I start, when I move to the United States, when I start talking to other people, when I start realizing that the reality is so different when you are, when you're not living, this particular standard, right? You have this realization that your life is, I'll tell you what I think. I think Judaism has gone down a spiral of what Diane, my wife, called mental masturbation, of trying to realize what can we do with the rules and how we, I'll give you an example. This week I read an article in the Israeli newspaper. It's like this section where the rabbi answers question. One of the question was, may I use a mechanical, may I use a bionic eye on Shabbat, on Sabbath? Because it's bionic, it's, there's electrical parts in it. May I use my eye on the 7th day? This is the type of mental masturbation that we're talking about. Let me start with language. Take the word plastic, for example. 150 years ago, plastic meant something totally different. It didn't mean the material plastic. It meant flexible. Plastic as a material did not exist. And yet when we say today that, it's plastic, what we mean is it's made out of plastic, right? Take the word gay, right? Gay used to mean happy. Now when we say, he's gay, he likes men. So words change their meaning over time. And if we look at the scope of human history, it's very short. we're talking about organized religion exists for about 3,500 years. Christianity exists for about 2,000. Islam exists for about 1,300, right? Maybe 1,400, started in the 600s AD. So we're talking a very short time in history. Now check this out. I heard that also in Sanskrit, but in Hebrew, the word sin, het, is coming from the same root as to miss the mark.
Oh.
Hechti et hamatara, miss the mark. Chet.
Chet.
Yeah. And so hechti is missed. And so let's take a step back and talk about what's the path towards enlightenment is. The path towards enlightenment, according to the ancient Hebrew wisdom, is all about raising the kundalini energy, raising the sexual energy, as it's called in the ancient Hebrew wisdom teaching, from the root energy center to the pineal gland, to essentially crystallize the pineal gland and reunite with the Father, as it says in Christianity. And the reuniting with the Father is the reunification with the higher self. Well, check this out. You cannot do this without following the programmed plan of the higher self. And every action that you do, that essentially you're following your own appetite as this living organism, you're missing the mark. It doesn't mean that it's bad. You're just missing the mark. Hence, sin, miss, chet. Now, when you look at the 7 deadly sins, this is very interesting. Isn't it weird that none of the 7 deadly sins have killing in them? Like, it's not one of the deadly sins to murder someone. But when you look at the 7 deadly sins, do you remember them as a good Christian, as a good Catholic girl? Putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, right. Probably not. Greed, avarice.
I think greed and avarice is the same one, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow, I can't remember them. No.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll pull them up real quick. But
see, you can't remember them either.
Hey, I'm not Christian, right? But
I don't think is it only Christian, the 7 deadly sins?
The 7 deadly sin is definitely in vices of Christian origin, no doubt. Where did the 7 deadly sins originated, and why are they deadly? And why? So the 7 deadly sins, let's name them. There's lust.
Oh yeah.
There's gluttony. There's greed, which is avarice. There's sloth. There's wrath. There's envy, and there's pride. Here's the deal. How come there's no killing someone?
Well, that goes into, that's the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife.
So are those deadly sins? Why is there 7 deadly sins and then there's the 10 Commandments? What's the difference? Here's the explanation. What is deadly? What is dead? Again, we go back to language. Dead, Jesus was talking about the dead versus the quick. Dead is you and me. We're dead. According to the definition in the New Testament, in the Bible. Dead is everybody who is walking around unawakened. The quick is the awakened individual.
Oh, interesting.
The 7 deadly sins are the 7 things that
keep you dead.
That keep you dead. You stay dead.
That you're not awake. That totally makes sense, and that goes with the whole yogic perspective.
There you go. It all goes
totally
back to the same origin.
Brahmacharya, ahimsa.
There you go.
Tapas is actually the fire that you want the fire. Like, wow, that's really interesting.
There you go. So check this out.
Yes.
None of these 7, let's go through them really quick.
Yeah.
None of these 7s you can still have and be able to raise the Kundalini energy successfully.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Lust. Lust is usually related to sexuality.
Yeah. But you can also lust for things.
You can definitely lust for things.
There's a lot of
let's keep that in
lusting for
greed.
things.
But let's keep that in greed, right?
Yes.
Because we want to separate
All
them.
right.
So with lust, we talk about the sexual energy. What is the first step? So in order to raise the Kundalini energy,
you have to harness
the sexual energy. Therefore, if you have lust, you will remain dead.
Yes.
More than that.
And I just want to say that energy, the Muladhara and the Svadhisthana, are both the the first and second root chakra, which also needs to be harnessed. It's the same thing in
Same
the yogic
thing.
system, that you need to harness that energy in order to raise
Yeah.
the kundalini.
And I'll take it a step further. Not only if you exercise your lust, you cannot raise your sexual energy because you're wasting that energy. If you have physical lust, you cannot raise your kundalini energy. Why? Because if you have physical lust, even without exercise, it's not about sin. It's not that you're doing something bad. But as long as you have physical lust, you are still physical lust, according to the ancient Hebrew wisdom and according to other sources, including the raw material, is a result of excess sexual energy in the lower chakras, specifically in the second and third chakra, which means that once you are ready to raise the kundalini energy beyond the third chakra, as into the fourth and above, you do not have lust anymore. You reach a state of natural
and of stillness.
Stillness sexually, which the word I'm looking for, abstinence. Yeah. So
brahmacharya.
Yeah. So if you're not looking at it as a bad way, it's like, it's not bad to have lust. It's just an indicator. As long as you still have it, you have not fine-tuned the balance within the lower energy centers, because when you are ready, you will not have physical lust. You will have love. You might want to make
which moves you right into the heart center.
Exactly.
The anahata.
Exactly. So that's one indicator. Easy to see how organized religion, going back to what I said before, how we try, we've learned that from the teacher, that as long as you have lust, then you're not, lust slowly over time through generations becomes bad. Sex becomes bad. There's nothing wrong with sexuality. But if you are interested in liberation, if you are interested in raising the kundalini energy, you work towards a situation where you do not have sexual lust. When that's it, particular, not through not doing it. There's other ways to do it. In fact, leaning into the desire is an important way. You have to understand why you have that particular lust. But we're not that's a topic for a different episode.
You can't even masturbate? You kidding me? So if you let's assume that you have the willpower to never masturbate and never have sex and never watch porn, and then you're with someone, you get married, you're gonna have no idea what sexuality even really is. And I don't think that that's as healthy, personally. Sex is a part of life. You should have it and enjoy it, but do it responsibly, I think. That's my personal view. So when you repress it, you do see a lot of people that have problems. They have no idea how to even relate to their partner. Or it's your sexual chemistry with someone. Let's say, you're really good friends with this person. You start dating. It's great. You get married. Then you find out that you are sexually incompatible. And now you're supposed to be with that person for life. You maybe wanted to factor that in before you got married. Maybe. Because that's going to be a big part of your relationship.
So let's talk about gluttony. There is no way to raise the kundalini energy without raising your physical vibration. And raising your physical vibration is only done with when you eat a very minimal amount of food. Not because you're depriving yourself, but because your body just doesn't need that level of energy.
The gluttony keeps us heavy and dull.
Exactly.
And I see this as a big... it's one of the illnesses of our country, of America.
Yeah.
The food that is sold out there, especially to the economically less advantaged people, like McDonald's and all the fast food, that keeps people dull.
Yep.
It's not fresh, and it doesn't have any chi, and it doesn't help them feel better.
So not only the food, thanks for that point, not only the food needs to be healthy and good food, but also there is a decrease, and I can say that knowingly, there's a decrease in the amount of food that you're eating, the higher your vibration is going. For those of us who meditate, there's no way to meditate successfully after you've eaten a lot. It's impossible. In fact, in the books that describe the process of awakening, there is a lot of emphasis on eating less, being light. And specifically, when we look at alchemy actually describes the importance and the criticality of a few things when it relates to raising your sexual energy. Just before you are getting ready to do so, there is 12 very specific foods that you have to ingest. And the concept of mastication becomes very critical, because the more you masticate, the more you chew your food, the easier it is for your body to process it. And there is particular chemical reactions in your body that happen when you masticate a lot that are critical for the chemical processes that have to happen before you raise the Kundalini energy in order to crystallize your pineal gland. So food, very critical. So that's gluttony. Greed. The more you go through your spiritual process, you understand that in order to win yourself, in order to find yourself, you must lose yourself. And I'm quoting Daphne Moore in her book, The Rabbi's Tarot. She goes through these 7 deadly sins herself and describes them in detail, and how each one of them relates to the raising of the Kundalini energy. And greed is a big piece of the puzzle. The more we have, the heavier we are energetically. And this is, I think, the reason why many people who walk the path end up as monks or people who have nothing, because there is lightness in it. And I'm not suggesting to the listeners that this is what one needs to do. The same with the others. If you have the desire for things, it's healthy, it's okay. It just means that you still have to understand why, and you still have to explore that. So leaning into desire is important. Again, a topic for a different episode. But the topic here is just to explain that as long as we still have a significant attachment to physical belongings, and as long as we still have greed, for example, when we want a lot of money, there's a reason. There's a psychological reason. Either we associate it with class, or either we associate it with safety, and then we have security. Fear. And as long as we have these emotions, fear, inadequacy from a social perspective, that means that we're not ready to raise the Kundalini energy. And I want to take a step back and say, for those listeners who have been with Kabbalistic Mystic for a while, there's 7 steps of enlightenment according to the ancient Hebrew wisdom. The first one is leaning into the desire, the devil card in tarot. The second one is the complete dissolution of the ego. So we cannot go through the process of the transformation of the mind, the transformation of the body, which are the 3rd and the 4th steps, without complete dissolution of the ego. Complete dissolution of the ego means...
That's painful.
That is very painful. And most people are stuck in the first phase. And the dissolution of the ego is... You cannot go through a complete dissolution of the ego and still have greed. You can't. It's impossible. And again, I'm not saying greed is bad. What I'm saying is, it can cause a lot of suffering. But if you just have greed and you're not doing bad things, if you're not causing suffering to others, it's not bad. Greed is just an indicator. It's just a side effect, shall we say, of a particular psychological distortion that it relates to the ego. So investigating it is a piece of the puzzle, but this is why it's considered a deadly sin. It keeps you dead.
Right, which is basically what you said they all do.
Yes,
which
exactly.
is true. And, I saw the greed piece a lot when I worked in investment banking, this sort of insatiable desire for more money, and yet a dissatisfaction with life. I remember thinking, wow, these people have so much money, and yet it feels more. Like they want more, but and I don't want to generalize about all investment bankers by any means, but it just seems like it's not making them happy. I think that happiness comes from connecting to our authenticity.
the indoctrination around sin is so powerful. We grow up with it from such a young age that it's almost impossible to talk about sin without the mind kind of going back to the original programming. So we're talking about something bad. At least I notice in my mind, this is the way it is. So I keep reminding myself of that as I talk. Let's go to the next one. Sloth.
All right. Sloth, not laziness.
The spiritual journey, if somebody is really interested in illumination, it's a hard path. And I'm not just talking about silencing your mind and meditation, which is in its own a huge mountain to climb. It can take
30 years.
It can take lifetimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
The entire process is extremely, extremely hard. And if you are lazy, you're just not going to make it. It's impossible. You have to be relentless. You have to be on it. You have to want it more than anything in the world.
All the time.
What does Buddhists say? They say you have to want illumination, like your hair is on fire, and you want to find water.
Oh, I never heard that.
Yeah, I heard it from Dan Brown, a meditation teacher I took a workshop with. You have to want it, and if you don't want it that bad, don't even get on the boat, because it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
It's going to be very, very hard. So sloth, a deadly sin. If you have sloth, you're going to, Vivekananda said, and, it hurts me because I definitely sin, quote unquote, in one of those. He said, if you eat too much, you cannot be a yogi. If you sleep too much, those who overeat cannot be yogis. Those who sleep cannot be yogis.
I think a big part of it is repression. So for me, I feel like some of the most healthy, like mentally healthy people that I know, and people that are the most well-adjusted, are people that just accept things. They just accept things, and they always have, or they were raised in a way where it's you accept things. It's like sex. Yeah, that's part of life. Accept it. Don't be having as much of it as you want, as you can, because that opens you up to diseases. That opens you up to emotional attachments, all that kind of stuff. You can hurt other people if you're not careful, if you're not explicit in talking about what it means to you and what it means to them. So I think when you repress it, you make those problems. I really do. I think it's fairly well understood in psychological circles, or just in psychology in general, that when you neglect something, when you refuse to accept that it's a part of existence, you make it more enticing, and you create a problem, because now there's friction there.
Yeah.
Where if, like in Europe, take for instance alcohol. Okay, in Mormonism, you're not supposed to have any alcohol at all. 3 out of the 5 children in my family, so myself and two of my siblings, like we struggle with substance abuse, struggle with addiction.
Wow.
And I think for the country, you see that as well. Now, we're personally responsible for our choices. I totally get that. But in the families that I know where it's not a big deal, like Catholic families, friends I know that are Catholic, drinking is like part of their culture. It's not a big deal. So when they drink, they don't feel guilty. Their first beer isn't like a huge guilty thing. It's actually something that's positive. They can celebrate with their friends. We did it. We won the big game. Let's go have a beer or whatever. So it's your relation. It changes your relationship to that. And in Europe, you look at their culture. It's like they don't have the same problem that we do with weekend binge drinking. People overdosing as much. People getting as addicted. They just don't.
Wrath.
Oh,
Wrath is anger.
Yeah. I can speak to anger. So anger has been one of my challenges in life. And I feel like, what I've noticed is first of all, it usually comes out of the people that I love, because I feel strangely safest to get really angry with them. I feel like I've got a much better handle on it in the last few years, but the energy of it is hot and it can be mean, and it is a projected self-hatred. Like, I think that's what it is. It's like there's something about yourself or some way of not empowering yourself that you hate. And you feel like it's this other person's fault. Like somehow there's a feeling of feeling trapped or blamed or like can't escape the situation or, and some mental situation. And I mean, I've broken plates, I've broken phones, I have thrown things, I've screamed, I have yelled, and it's not pretty. And I feel like it's very scarring and harming to the other beings, whether that's your animals or a person. And I do feel like, I'm sorry to those who I have caused harm.
Yeah. Thanks for that very articulate description of anger. I feel, just to kind of repeat what you're saying, that for me, anger comes when I feel like there's nothing I can do. Like I'm sort of stuck, in this, like, oh, there's no way I can turn. And anger,
trapped.
Yeah, exactly. And from again, going back to if one really wants illumination to raise the Kundalini, why is this a deadly sin? Why does it keep you dead? Because as long as you do have anger, there's two things. First of all, having the anger means that you have not learned to smooth out that particular psychological piece. Because when we are ready for the raising of the Kundalini energy, there's a particular tranquility that we can keep at any point in time. And so we must view anger in that particular context, and according to those teachings, as a road sign that there's still something to learn and understand about that. And the second thing about anger is, which is true about the other emotions as well, but specifically about anger, because that's the fire that usually hard to contain, is that there is no accomplishing the goal when it comes to the spiritual journey without eventually learning to control your emotions. And that is an important piece of the puzzle. So,
and I just want to say one more thing about anger. There's a lot of energy in anger, and it can be mobilized. If you can harness the energy of anger and turn it around for your own benefit and use it to empower your own change, then usually it starts to dissipate because you empower yourself. And once you're empowered, then you don't feel trapped.
Right.
And you don't feel stuck.
Yeah, it sounds to me like it'll be great to have a whole episode about anger.
Yeah, I mean, anger, I have definitely dealt with anger. And it's, and as a yogi, like I feel like, I've been on the yogic path. It's been really like the very first, the foundation of the yogic path is do no harm.
Yeah.
So if you have an anger issue, it's
it's right there.
It's right there in your face all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Let me give you a little inside information about God. God likes to watch. He's a prankster. Think about it. He gives man instincts. He gives you this extraordinary gift, and then what does he do? I swear, for his own amusement, his own private cosmic gag reel, he sets the rules in opposition. It's the goof of all time. Look, but don't touch. Touch, but don't taste. Taste, don't swallow. And while you're jumping from one foot to the next, what is he doing? He's laughing his sick fucking ass off. He's a tight ass. He's a sadist. He's an absentee landlord. Worship that? Never.
So, what's the biggest sin you've ever committed, Andy?
Are we really going there right out the
let's
gate?
just fucking go there. Do it, man.
Okay, what is the biggest sin? Well, I don't know. Certainly guilty of pride, like in a bad way.
Okay.
Who is it? Older. Who's what?
Who guilty of pride?
Right. But I feel like that's hurt me in ways. And everyone is guilty of it, but I realized, like, for me, it's like I was compensating for this lack of feeling loved in a way, like I battle with depression and stuff like that. So it's just overcompensating for feeling shitty, really. So now I got to be really important, right? Because if I feel so shitty, well, then if I'm important, well, then I'll be less shitty.
Let's talk about the last two. So they're envy and pride. And I think the last two are related to the dissolution of the ego, right? When you have envy, let's talk about them separately. When you have envy, it means that they're really the opposite of each other, right? Envy means that you don't think that you're good enough. There's not going to be enough for you, that you're not worthy enough to receive what you want to receive. And therefore you envy someone else.
Yeah. I know envy too.
Yeah.
Like envy is, well, I don't know if we all do. I think if you're living your own path really well, that you don't know envy that well. Yeah. I mean, maybe everybody goes through envy. I don't know. But I certainly know for myself, like there's been people I'm like, oh my God, I so want to be. Like, I want to be like that person. I want to be that person.
Oh, interesting. See, I don't have that. Yeah, interesting.
It's like I've wanted to, let me just put it this way. I've wanted to have the success of some other people that I haven't had, or haven't perceived that I've had.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we just don't see ourselves either.
Yeah, and it's interesting because according to the tree of life, you're actually right. Because according to the tree of life, they're actually opposites of each other, because according to the tree of life, you're either skewed to the masculine or the feminine, and envy and pride are actually opposites. When you have envy,
isn't that what you said?
Yeah, it's an unworthiness. So you're describing what envy means to you. I don't think I ever had that, the concept of like, I want to be like this person.
Because you probably are on the pride side.
I'm definitely on the pride side. Yeah. And usually you can tell a particular individual is either, I'm definitely. You either think you're better than others, by definition, or you think you're not as good. Even if we go to the Enneagram, the personality types, each personality type falls under one category or the other. And I'm a 7. That's definitely a pride number. You're a 4. That's 4. Definitely an envy number. It's actually the envy number. I was looking at the but
the glass
I'm not going to digress
full,
to the Enneagram here.
But pride, I just want to, can we jump to pride here?
Yes.
So pride, I notice when I do have moments of pride, it'll happen, whatever, in a yoga pose. I'll be like, oh, I've rocked this. And the minute I have the moment of pride, boom, it's gone. Like it kills the thing that I had pride about.
Yeah.
And it keeps it, so I haven't suffered a lot of pride, just because I feel like I tend more towards the unworthy humility, just generally. But maybe I have secret pride. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But and then it's like, but the pride. I those moments when I do have it, I notice it usually kills the thing.
Well, here's the thing.
So
there's no one without the other,
Yeah.
right? Because take me, for example, like I suffer from pride. The person who suffers from pride absolutely suffers from envy, but the energy is flipped. So it's hidden, it's concealed. I'll give you an example. What happens to the person who has pride when they suffer from envy, they translate it into pride. I'll give you an example. When somebody like me who really wants to be a published author meets somebody who is already a published author, then there's envy, right? But what happens, because pride comes, and what I've noticed that what I do automatically is look for the faults of that person and rationalization of why that person has succeeded in oh, maybe they know somebody in the industry. Oh, well, that's not fair. Or, oh, this is
why you have them.
yeah. Oh, they have a lot
Maybe
of
it's
money.
because you're not
so-
writing your book.
Yeah, maybe, right? But do you see my point? So
Yeah.
envy translates itself into pride,
Right.
and it goes the other way around. When we have pride, when you're a person who suffers from lack of self-esteem, and pride does come up, it translates itself very, very fast into envy again, because it just flips on itself the second that you have can I really be that particular person? Do you have an example?
Right.
You're saying that when you feel pride and it kind of
Oh, well, very,
shoot yourself in
very basic, like playing ping pong. Like, I'm pretty good, and I have a technique in my head that really works for me
yeah.
to stay on it. But the minute I notice, I'm like, oh, yeah. Like, I get a little like, oh, yeah, I'm really good at this. Like, I'm the shit. Or, I got that point. Boom, I'll miss a point.
And how does that feel?
It just feels like, I lost the focus on the game.
Yeah, but
I lost the focus on the game. Instead, I turned towards giving myself a big old pat on the back because I think I'm so good.
And beyond the fact that you're actually starting to lose because you're giving yourself a pat on the back and sort of the universe immediately teaches you the lesson, what does it feel like to lose?
Oh, yeah, I don't like it.
Because it makes you feel like you're unworthy.
Oh, yeah, less than.
And so the person who doesn't really care about winning, the more you care about winning, the more bad you'll feel about losing.
Right.
And, I've noticed that with people that are highly competitive, it's really painful for them to lose because they feel really shitty about who they are. So going back.
I mean, I've worked on healing that, but wow, in the past, I mean, I'm still very competitive, but wow, in the past, it would just be like, like I was 10 still.
Right. Yeah. So I just want to summarize. So going back to the spiritual journey, the entire concept of the ego dissolution is to realize, but not just intellectually, because we all realize, all us seekers realize that we're not who we think we are. Right. Losing the sense of identity and persona that we've built for ourselves since the moment we were, with all the labels, since the moment we were born. Oh, it's a boy, it's a girl, or Jewish, or Israeli, or Catholic, or whatever, right? I'm white, I'm black. And this dissolution, as painful as it is critical for that process. And as long as we suffer from these things, these 7 deadly sins, it means that we are let's rename them as the 7 signposts of the ego personality. It means that we are not ready. We're not ready for that raising of the Kundalini energy that is the final stage of enlightenment. No doubt that we're not ready. We're all humans. We're all here in physical form. We are working on it. But understanding that, I think, can help alleviate a lot of the shame, a lot of the guilt that is associated with the concept of sin. Sin is a myth.
So to reframe sin as a signpost that we still just have some things to work on.
Exactly.
And to let go of, so that we can, I always like to think of it as, so that we can buff ourselves off and get a little shinier and spread a little more light. Exactly.
Which is the essence of the spiritual journey, right? We become a vessel for the light that goes through us.
Yeah.
And the more, and I was explaining in previous episodes that we are nothing but a conductor for that light, just like an electric appliance.
And
you connect to the electricity. There's a resistor in it that resists the electrical charge that comes from the wall and uses that energy that it's resisting in order to be animated. We are nothing but just like an appliance that is working on the cosmic energy that flows through us. And the resistors, we have 12 resistors in the shape of the 12 zodiac signs. And each resistor resists the energy in a different way. In essentially, an infinitely unique way that creates our ego personality, creates our personality, the way we reflect ourselves in the world, our own unique color. And it's actually just like a color palette. There's actually only 7 and then 5 half steps, just like in music. So you have the 12. And what happens is that the more we go through the spiritual journey, the less light we block, the less light we resist, and the more light we shine, the better we love, because love is all the colors together. It's the combination of all of them.
And then
it's
we be
pure
love.
light. And we be love. I be love. Right? And so that's the purpose. And working on these signposts on lust. Why do we lust? Understand it. Leaning into desire as long as we don't hurt ourselves and others. Greed. Why do we greed? Oh, what am I afraid of? I'm afraid I'm not going to have enough money. I'm afraid, people are not going to like me because I don't have enough. So on and so forth. Working on wrath. Working on sloth. Working on those.
Basically, you're saying to try to understand why.
Exactly.
Like the root cause of what our particular propensity is within the 7 sins.
My purpose in this episode is to allow people to, and especially refugees of organized religion in the West, to understand how it came about that sin is sin.
Yeah.
And when we look at the 7 deadly sins, these 7 signposts indicating that you are still not ready for that final stage of illumination, it's very easy to understand how it came about that sexuality is bad, that
right.
all these things.
But I'd like to reframe it, because when you say you're not ready, it feels like a negative in my ear. And so, like, can we rename that to say something more like these signposts, these 7 signposts are indicators that I still have more clearing out to do.
Yeah, more buffing of the diamond.
More buffing of the diamond rather than you're not ready.
Yeah,
like for me, you're not ready feels like a wet blanket.
I see. Okay. Well, no wet blankets for any of our listeners. Thank you for that clarification.
Does that feel a little more positive to you?
Yeah.
Like, I have a little more buffing off to do so I can shine in that particular area.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, I'm obsessed with food and I overeat.
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's not a bad thing. It's simply the area of my work.
Yes.
Or, oh, wow, I have to have so much money in the bank to feel safe. Well, that's not a bad thing. It's just, do I need that much money? Can I release myself so I can do what I love to do?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like that way I feel more happy about the signposts.
Yeah.
Rather than them pointing to the fact that I'm not ready. I'm like, oh, that's such a bummer.
Absolutely. And I think that the reason why, in the context of this episode, it was important to me to point the negative versus the positive, because I'm trying to show why it became contextually a bad thing.
Right.
Right.
But let's flip it.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I think once there's understanding of how it came about, I think then it's easier to flip it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. That's really edifying.
Yeah, isn't it interesting?
Yeah, that was
it's interesting.
That was great.
So one last anecdote that I mentioned in past episode, but just to say, because the first stage of enlightenment is desire, which includes greed and lust and all those, and all the bodily appetite, including sloth, oversleeping, basically leaning into everything that you just like emotionally want, even anger. The first stage of enlightenment is depicted in tarot as the devil. The Hebrew letter for that is Ein, which means eye, the eye that sees, because what do we covet? We covet what we see, as Hannibal Lecter said in Silence of the Lamb. And hence the expression evil eye.
Oh.
The expression evil eye came about because of the letter Ein. Ein hara in Hebrew means evil eye. And over the generations, it became this bad thing, evil eye, because it's associated with the devil card. The devil is nothing. Let's talk about this metaphoric story of Jesus in the desert. The devil comes to him and said, oh, well, if you're a God, why can't you turn this stone into bread? Go ahead and do it. The devil is nothing but we are the devil. We are everything. We are God. The devil is within us. It's just a constant choice at any given moment.
Yeah.
What do we want to walk the path of the higher self? Or do we want to walk the path of the appetites of the body?
Yeah.
And
what do we want?
And in that way, we are all sinners. So, yeah. So I want to thank you, Diane, for being here with us today. Always good to have you on Kabbalistic Mystic.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and until next time, let's keep on sinning. Andy, thank you so much for visiting Kabbalistic Mystic.
Thanks for having me, Aerez.
If any of you want to listen to Andy's music, andyrumsey.com. That's RUMMSEY on andyrumsey.com. And his latest album, Here We Are, is a beautiful, beautiful album that I have in my car and listen to all the time. So, yeah, the only thing I regret, and I think is a sin, that we didn't get you singing here. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
This concludes our 15th episode of Kabbalistic Mystic, The Myth of Sin. Today you heard music by Lee Rosevere, songs called I'm Going for Coffee and Under Suspicion. And of course by Andy Rumsey, the song Dearly. In and Out music produced by Ovadya Batat, myself, and created by Todd Milne. You heard Fair Use clips, the Bible from the musical The Book of Mormons, and a movie bit you've heard was Al Pachino in The Devil's Advocate. From Spokane, Washington, I wish you love in every moment. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.